Hi, Jimmy.
What's happening, boy?
Any news?
I just taking a handy there. Now I'm going down there. I'm going to go down to the pub for a few drinks. You go down.
To the unvaccinated arms, is it?
Yeah, grand spot. Great spot. They're all in there.
All
All the
right, so
gang.
we'll walk down there, but maybe on the way down we'll say an Our Father, will we?
Do we? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Can't
so
tell.
in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.
All this still there.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
St. Oliver Plunkett, pray for us. In the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Yeah, we'll pop in there, so will we?
Yeah.
Oh, nice one.
Okay, we got on. Should be about done there. It was roasting today, isn't it?
Very hot, jeez. Do you want to call or will I?
They know me anyway, but just tell them you're there and tell me what your usual.
Alright, so yeah, down here, yeah, great. So I heard you had a bit of hassle there in your house, did you?
Unbelievable. The diversity is kicking in all over the place now.
Yeah.
All the songs and the chants and the freaking hell. We'll have to, I don't know. It's really coming alright though.
It used to be the case that you'd hear kind of the Wolf Tones or kind of the Clancy brothers. Now it's kind of Islamic kind of call to prayers.
It's just brutal because I just first thought like I'm just thinking like you know, the likes of Luton and Bradford and all these places with the slow creep, you know. Actually, someone was on to me there during the week. Well, before I even say that story, the fact that heck's sake, you know what I mean? We know our towns are just slowly transforming into something, and we're just standing by and letting it happen. It's brutal. Yeah. Very, very bad. Very bad. It's a serious danger, and that's how it starts. But someone was on to me during the week about Lebanon. You know, Lebanon. That's what we put this here in Ireland. Actually, all of our Irish army were over there for peacekeeping, wasn't it?
That's right.
And well done to them. Like they're great. Like, but Lebanon was the same. It was a Christian place, and then they left in a few Muslims and it's gone. No, like just gone. Like they just took over, isn't it?
Well, the whole of North Africa was actually very Christian. You know.
Yeah, and that's how it goes, like that process, you know. So it's happening here on every street. But and as you said there before to me, like the idea that it's one thing about people doing these things, but your own crowd have to stand up. And I do think that, you know what they say, forgive me for what I've done and what I failed to do. Like we're kind of failing to step up to the mark here to kind of say, oh, no, we don't want this at all. Like, you know, it's brutal. Like.
Yeah, it's very alarming to be honest, but just to put it in context as well, I mean, you and I would be very disturbed if we heard that there was, you know, an encroachment of a load of Norwegians into Ireland or into Afghanistan. Yeah. You and I are nationalists. We believe that you know, that people should be able to, you know, promote their own income preference, and that doesn't mean that you hate everybody else. I certainly don't. I'm in a kind of a strange quandary with regard to Afghanistan, because part of me is saying, listen, the Americans should never have been in there in the first place, to be honest. And I know the Taliban are, you know, they're fairly tough, you know, kind of fairly puritanical. But then I'll kind of say, listen, let the Afghanis, if other Afghanis don't want that, then they should have a kind of fight their own fight. I just don't believe that there should be kind of other nations influencing or interfering in another nation's business. Because, Jimmy, that's why we have the problem here. We've got all the corporations, right? We've got all the international, global, homo and all this stuff going on that has affected our country. You know?
Yeah, it's just insidious. Like, that's just, it's orchestrating things from within. But the funny thing about the Afghan question, though, is like the main question is, are they better off with the Taliban or with the American crowd? Like, and it sounds like a kind of a glib comment, but it's not really, like, because yes, the other lads are harsh, but the American thing, you know, that thing where they're dressing up the little boys and you know, raping and stuff. I mean, that's pretty intense. I mean, that was under the old Afghan American-sponsored government or whatever you call it.
That's right.
Was there a name? Was there a name for that? What they used to call it?
It starts with B, and I'm trying to locate it here because I hadn't
Oh
been...
no, I know the dance name. Backy Dak. I don't know, it's some strange
Wacky
name or whatever.
Backy.
Yeah, I saw the thing, but
yeah.
it was a thing that they were doing, and that's something the Taliban are opposed to. So for that alone, great. Put an end to that. That's that. But again, here's me. See, this is where you come into tough, like let them be or whatever. Because then, like, I want to say, look, that's terrible. End that. But then at the same time, it's like I can't tell others to end stuff, but obviously that needs to end. So, you know what I mean? If there's a level of stuff that's weird, but the so-called saviors, them were. Now, we can't really say the Americans were into that. I think a lot of soldiers got PTSD and all this kind of stuff, and serious trauma from being around that.
Yeah.
That boy rape, basically, what it is on a mass scale.
I'll comment here on it. It's called Basha Bazi. It's a centuries-old practice. And one of the original factors apparently mobilising the rise of the Taliban was their opposition to the practice. And this practice apparently was it's a form of kind of paedophilia, right, where they dress up young boys, very young as 9, forcing them to dress as women and to dance seductively for an audience of older men. So, like, the Taliban wanted to get rid of that. Now, obviously, we're not painting the Taliban as kind of, superheroes. But the reality is that you are right. Before the Taliban came into power, and I believe this practice, and it continued after the Taliban were taken out, and that the Americans turned a blind eye to it. Now, I don't have any problem with American servicemen. They're just ordinary grunts, kind of Joes, thinking they're doing the best for their nation. But I do have a major problem with cultural imperialism. And that's what's happening in our country as well, Jimmy.
It is. I'm being forced all over the place. But isn't that funny that, funny as in very bad, like, but, you would think, let's just say, I suppose it was mainly Americans, wasn't there? Was there a lot of kind of Russians there and a lot of EU crowd as well, like into Afghanistan, but just, I don't know, what do we call them, Westerners, there, but they were there to sort of help the place and save the place, but what actually happened was they were helping to impose all the crap stuff, it seemed, and ignoring the kind of evil stuff, like that boy rape thing.
Well, so, exactly. I came across a very... Sorry, Jimmy,
thing, but then leave them be at all the other stuff that, leave them. Or just leave I want to say leave them be in general, but no one, even internationally, like, no one wants to see that kind of stuff going on. It's weird, like,
Yeah, but in fairness, I suppose it was the Taliban that tried to get rid of the paedophilia stuff. Now, on the other side of it, then they're marrying young girls, so it's kind of, robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing. But the way I look at it, though, Jimmy, right, is that if the Taliban or if the Afghani people don't want this stuff, then they should be the ones to decide they don't want it. In the same way that, in Ireland, I believe that a lot of Ireland's culture has changed, not because Irish people really wanted it, but because they were manipulated by external kind of powers and influences.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah.
Be
very careful that they get in,
Exactly. I mean, listen, if someone wants to do their Allah Akbar and all that stuff right in Saudi Arabia, grand, away off with you, no problem. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you can't even wear a cross, a crucifix, openly in Saudi Arabia. So why is it that, or like we saw there in Pakistan, a young 13-year-old Catholic girl, right, was kidnapped and forced into a marriage with some old fella in Pakistan, and the Supreme Court validated it. So, like,
just left do whatever they want in other places. Like, that would be it. Like, I nearly set for that, as we said, we're just two normal fellas, but I nearly set for that. And within our borders of our place, like, it's how it should be and used to be for a long time. And it's ours, and go away and don't be. Outside of that, I'd never be like, just do what you want, like, just whatever.
Yeah.
It's not to do, like, look after yourselves. I don't want to be telling anyone what to do, but honestly, that when it's on your street and you hear it and all this mixing, like, Okay, like anyone there know, like if you get onto a bus and the bus is full of all different noises. I remember years ago actually, years ago now, because I used to remember like Ireland didn't get migrants. This is the oddest thing. If there's one central message here, Ireland didn't really get this influx of migrants till about 10 years ago. Like there was a load of like Polish Eastern Europeans coming in around just before the crash, like wasn't there? So that was kind of like that was like oh, it's a bit odd or whatever. But this kind of like from all angles, all colours thing only happened, I would say, less than 10 years ago. So,
I don't know, Jimmy. I'm a bit older than you, and like the Refugee Act came in 1996 to meet with a big demand, right? That was coming from all over the world, especially from Africa. Now I know there was a trickle from the Balkans because of the Balkan conflict, right? But that's also precipitated the constitutional amendment to close off the loophole with regard to anchor babies, right? Because you had women from Nigeria who are coming, placing their babies in jeopardy, by the way, 8 months pregnant almost, and then once they get to the country, they'd obviously give birth, right? And then they'd cling on to the birthright of the baby. And it was so bad, apparently, that airlines were being punished if they willingly allowed a very heavily pregnant woman to board a plane to enter Europe. Because it was a big scam, right? And then we closed it off, and then there was a depletion. And you'll see actually a lot of the young black males around today from Africa, people think, oh, they're the product of asylum seekers. They're not. They're the product of people who abused the loophole because we brought into, because of the Good Friday Agreement, right? And listen, I've said it before, we're all self-interested. I've no problem someone saying that they'll do X, Y, and Z for the betterment of their family, right? Because we'd all do it. But at the end of the day, right, we also have our self-interest, and our self-interest is to preserve our country, our nation, and our customs. So why is it that their self-interest is given a priority to our self-interest? I call that real racism. Because, like, I've said this to you before, Jimmy, if there were any races at all, right, that should have a legitimate access to Ireland, there'd be two, right? One would be the Native Americans, because we went to America, and the other is probably the Australian Aborigines. But we're not getting them. So when I hear people saying, we went there, we went here, therefore I don't remember any Irish people going to Pakistan or Nigeria, do you?
No, it'd be crazy. But I'm just laughing there because, you know that the citizenship referendum thing we're on about, was it 2000 and, I don't know, whatever year it was anyway, but that came in at 79% or whatever. But here's the thing, I don't even know the idea. Like, I'm saying loophole because I've heard other people saying it. I don't know what the legal thing was with that, like that, you're allowed in. I don't know, maybe you might know a bit about it, right? But the point is, we're talking about Nigerian women getting onto a plane. Like, I doubt they were looking up international laws and stumbled across, Ireland has this loophole. Like, if you actually think about it, isn't that really weird? Like, they were just stumbling along these books, like in whatever, rural Nigeria or whatever, and just like, oh, look there, Ireland has this little loophole now that we could get by and we could kind of... No, it didn't. So who's the person that went around to them and said, look, go here, lad, because we can do that?
I think in a way you're doing them a bit of a disservice, Jimmy, because listen, people are canny. Yeah, because...
But someone had to do that, because like there's no chance Nigerians just picked up on international laws and there's a little loophole in Ireland, let's go there.
No, but it's like everything else. I mean, you had advertising in Nigeria about saying, listen, there's loopholes, avail of them. Then, of course, you'd also hear that, like, word of mouth. I mean, there are two systems, right? You've got jus soli, which is the law of the land, or not the law of the soil, effectively. And you've got jus sanguinis, right? And Ireland was jus soli, which means that if you were born in the country, you got citizenship, automatic citizenship. And because if a baby's born in the country, obviously the baby can't fend for himself. So what happened was, there was a tendency for the parents then, by virtue of the child, to get some form of naturalisation, right? Now they wouldn't have automatic citizenship, it's only the child, but because the child has to be cared for. But other countries had jus sanguinis, right, which means that you have to have a blood connection to the country. So we removed the jus soli, I suppose, way of looking at granting automatic citizenship with the referendum. But now you've got all these kind of far leftists wanting to bring it in. And of course you and I know that it won't be the Ivana Bacics of this world will have to go into a public emergency hospital, or a hospital seeking public services. She'll go off to her private, or she'll avail of some private service, and she won't have to go through all the crowding, and she won't have to navigate very, very kind of poorly funded public services. And that's what happens, because when there's more people in the country and very few of those are actually contributing, you've got a huge strain on the public services. And before people start, you're typical, you start off with Islamophobia, racism, blah, 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 blah. It's not. I've no problem with someone's colour. Zero. In fact, I've said it so many times, I've met far nicer people who aren't Irish, right? But that's not the issue for me. Ireland is for the Irish, good, bad and indifferent.
It has to be, like, but just saying out in this pub here, a pub, like, whether people like to admit it or not, it's just shit crack to have all sorts of people. Shit crack. No one knows how to get on with each other. They do that thing where it's, an old pleasant nod, like, and if you're looking for, I want to be a bit crude here now, but if you're looking for some bit of action, then you'll entertain it. Oh, isn't it great? But other than that, you're just sort of just doing this kind of uncomfortable nod, like, oh, hello, kind of stupid thing. Whereas when it's your own people, you just get on with them. It's just easier, it fits better. So that's, if that was a pub. If you were on a bus, well, that was the story I was meant to tell you earlier. So anyway, this was years ago now. This is maybe just as the big influx was happening. And I was on a bus, and there was these two old ladies just talking to each other, Irish women, like whatever, just talking away, whatever. And this woman got on and sat kind of beside him, like kind of, the other seat, whatever you call it, adjacent or whatever. And she was talking on the phone in a foreign language. I don't know what it was, but I said it might be an Eastern European one. And I remember the old lady just turned around and kind of said, like in kind of like horrified, like they were like, geez, that's very rude, isn't it? That's very rude, isn't it? You one talking like that over here, like. And I kind of thought, whoa, that was a bit strong at the time. But now I'm like, in fairness, like it is a bit weird, like. And in Ireland, we haven't been used to that at all. And I absolutely hate it. Like, I absolutely hate the fact that you can't go down any street now in any city in Ireland, and you can't make head nor tail of what anyone's saying. It's all this crap all over the place. Like, it's brutal. Like, it is not enjoyable at all. Well, anywhere you be forced into it, it's just going to be terrible splittage of people. No one's getting on. They're all kind of fake. I think John Waters said that years ago, but when he went to London and he noticed the reason the multiculturalism can happen is that everyone keeps their head down, and it's a first good way of summing it up, really. Like,
well, there was a political scientist called Robert Putnam, right, and I think he wrote a book called Bowling Alone, and he was arguing that kind of social capital is essentially the amount of trust available in a community, right, and trust is attenuated, shall we say, when the homogeny of a community is affected adversely, right? So, and ironically, Putnam is a leftist, and I think anybody would know. I mean, we should, of all countries, we should know more than anybody else, right? Up north, we have people of the same ethnicity, more or less, right? Most northern Protestants are either, of Scottish extraction, and many Scots have similar, because they're Celts as well, have similar gene pool to us, right? And they came over, and look what but because they culturally, or even just religiously, but also kind of, they had different loyalties to the crown, and we didn't. And look at the amount of friction.
call it?
Yeah, friction that caused.
Friction, yeah. Still,
Yeah,
and that's never going to be sorted. Now I know. Look, we're down in Cork. Like they're like, "Oh, show out you whatever." That's never going to be sorted. Like when you see the videos above, and they're just living there on big high walls and fences. Like, I mean, how artificial is that? Like, is that not the equivalent of putting what would you call it? Like two animals who are just going to fight the whole time, but you keep them in a cage and you have a divider between it, pretend that it's the grey. Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's not working. Like, it's never going to work.
But you see, what I don't understand, Jimmy, right? The same people who would object to colonisation, right, saying, "Oh, get the whites out of Africa, get Palestine for the Palestinians, get the Israelis out there," but then they seem to have no problem destroying our country. Like we didn't, people go on about saying, "Oh, nationalism is dangerous. It's or it causes warmongering." No, it doesn't. Some nations do. Most nations don't. I don't remember Ireland or the Irish saying, "Oh yeah, we want to conquer the world." We just want to be left on our own. Do you know?
Yeah.
Like the same so-called far-right people, and I addressed that earlier on in a previous video. The same people are called far-right were the same people years ago who would be giving their couple of, whatever money they had or to the black babies in Africa because people were decent. We haven't changed, to be honest, right? Because we said we'll help out anybody abroad. We'll give them a leg up if we can, if we have a bit left over. But like we see a lot of people now coming to this country. We saw it there with those big I suppose riots almost in Balbriggan, where these young fellas and young ones like African were saying that, "Oh, we want our own land, we want this, we want that," and it's you're kind of going, "Hang on here, this is our country."
Yeah, they're just parroting though what they've heard of American crap, but it's just I don't know. It's so silly. Like it's obviously not working. It's all being forced, whatever. But I wonder, is it just because it's all been like when you take out honesty here and people haven't been talking and stuff, you end up with this. I just find it's odd. Like the same people as you're saying, like they'd be on about like they'd be Celtic fans and they'd hate the Rangers. Because why in Ireland? Like they bring it up in an Irish context for some reason, even though it's a Scotland thing. But they bring up because they're planters, like you know. And then they can't put the two and two together about what's going on now. But they're all over the place. Sometimes I think, why are we even talking about them? They're a small number of people, dopes all over the place. But it just seems that a lot of people are either afraid to say something or what, I don't know. Like, or they're just slowly letting the frog boil here. Like, and it's going to lead to nothing but trouble. And wasn't that exactly what Was it Enoch Powell said that, or was it Mosley said that? I can't remember, but he said it would lead to nothing but trouble. Like it.
Yeah, Enoch Powell of Rivers of Blood. No, I mean,
it's not fun. Like, you know what I mean? You have to take a serious hit on your quality of life and just stick to your own. And you're in a shady position. You're not comfortable. You're not happy the whole time. It's brutal. Like.
Yeah.
And then you get some, as we said, the Muslim crowd then decide, "Oh, it's time now. Let's blare out our thing." Actually, that's very interesting. Here's a topic to talk about for a second, right? The Muslims will blare out their song as a kind of an identity kind of marker or whatever, territory marker thing. It's ours now, we take kind of thing. But we all kind of do that. Like I remember being over in Australia and fellas would have just suddenly all the GA jerseys go constantly and they would have the Irish flags up at the window. And I noticed that even around apartments here. Most people put their flag on their window facing the outside.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that only to mark, like, "Oh, look, an Italian lives here," kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's such an odd thing, but we all do it, and it's very interesting, like, to watch it. But that's going to just be a constant bickering for kind of space now all over the place. It's just horrible. It seriously is. But, oh yeah, there's another thing I was saying to you. The idea that if you do help people, I think it's not a great idea, really, like, because a lot of resentment comes with that as well, you know. When people get helped or something, you think, "Oh, it worked out well, they can look after themselves." No, if you can do it that way, good. But a lot of people seem like they get the help and they're kind of resentful. Like, yeah, I see it very often with people asking for money on the street. Sometimes God love them and all, but they can get this aggressive entitlement sometimes. I know they have a tough time, especially with the drugs and all that and withdrawals. You can get that, and from the foreign crowd, we're seeing it all the time, especially the African crowd and all that. You help them, and then it's suddenly an entitlement, and then it's suddenly, oh, you're keeping me down, and it's a terrible carry on. Like, it needs to all finish and everyone go back to where they were from, kind of thing, and be much happier then.
Yeah, I just think that it's so deep rooted now. I mean, I was talking to some English guys there, and because they would be of our generation, but they actually grew up when England started to become multicultural, and so it became a norm. And I just worry that young kids growing up now, who are in classes where it's very multicultural, they will say that, oh, this is normal, so they won't have any grievance, right? We do, because we remember Ireland for being Ireland for what it was. And I suppose that's what irritates me, to be honest, because you're called you're called an Islamophobe, a racist, and all this rubbish, right? And at the end of the day, you're saying, no, I just want Ireland to be Irish for the Irish. What's wrong with that? Our ancestors fought for it, and they were for decades or whatever, since independence, were kind of lauded for it. They were saying, oh, they were Irish heroes, and now because we're more or less taking on the torch, and to be honest, it's like it isn't even a torch; it's more like a matchstick, to be honest. But like, we're no different, and we're suddenly labelled as you're this. I'll be honest, right? I have no problem with someone else's religion or their colour or whatever, but this is our country. End of story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If I go to
argument, anyway, it's not even an argument. It's the equivalent to saying, oh, you're a meanie, so we can't have any discussion. It's dumb. Like, it's. I don't care anyway. But it's dumb. Like, I mean, we have to say what we think or whatever, But that's one thing that annoys me the most. Things have to be said. I hate someone trampling down on the truth. Like, that's very annoying. You know what I mean? Trying to stop you talking the truth, or oh, you can't think that. No. If they can't handle the specifics and the truth, they shouldn't be having a chat. They're too weak. You should get out of the chat, get out of the talk, the discussion, get out of it. But I have noticed, I had something very interesting. I've actually noticed that a lot of the so-called, let's call them racially self-interested, that was another study I've seen before, that a lot of these liberal types, they can't distinguish, well, racism is a dumb word made by Trotsky, the communist Jew, anyway, first of all. But I suppose I am, but that prayer thing, whatever it was, just pissed me off. Like, I mean, I have to be honest here. Like, I'm not cool, calm now. It's annoyed me. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? I up to the shagging thing, like, and that's the reality of this. When you get this stuff in your face all day long, in your face, it's pain and all. So anyway, I have noticed, the racial, they couldn't distinguish between a racism. Let's not call it a Trotsky thing. Let's call it just hating others and wanting ill on them, which none of us want that. That's dumb, really, when you break it down. If we don't want ill on anyone, just go back to where you're from, and it would be much easier. But anyway, they couldn't distinguish between racism and racial self-interest. They thought racial self-interest was also a form of wanting ill to others, which is like a terrible logical inconsistency. But there was a study on that, and I saw that. But what I've noticed as well is that the so-called self-interested crowd, what are called far-right and all that, I've noticed they actually are the ones that have a genuine curiosity and interest in others' culture. Like, they'll know about different regions and differences. They'll know about traditions here, traditions there. Whereas the crowd who talk about nothing at all, they're all mixed up because they think we're all the same. But at the same time, these are different, so treat them such a way. Like, you know what I mean? We're all the same, but then racism exists, all this kind of nonsense. But they have no genuine interest in the cultures of others. They just like to say, with their usual dopey hipster carry on, oh sure, yeah, they're that's the way they are, kind of dumb shit. But they've no information or genuine interest in it. They don't want to talk about it all day. Whereas I've noticed people like ourselves, we'd be like, all right, but why would you do that? Or what's that all about? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I've seen that. You know what I mean? We'd have a genuine interest. I've noticed that now, common trend all over the place. Like, it would be like, oh, yeah, this crowd here. You know, we'd watch documentaries. Oh, that crowd there, up with Northern India, they were doing this, and they had the tribe thing and this, and oh, I've seen that. This crowd there, they were up Siberia. This crowd, they were over in Asia. Do you know what I mean? We'd be genuinely into the differences. And the lefties aren't. They don't care about any of that kind of stuff, like, you know. So I found that's a very interesting thing, alright.
Well, I've had that discussion with someone recently, because I said, there's this person was quite kind of liberal-minded, and they said, oh, they wanted to go to Italy, and I said, why are you going to Italy? And he said, oh, to experience the culture. And I said, but you're, so you do recognise that, you know, you're going over to witness or embrace, or not even embrace, but savour a unique culture. I said, don't you see the irony there with your multiculturalism? Because multiculturalism wants to effectively, right, create a franchise in every country. It's like getting rid of all the little quaint burger joints and just putting a McDonald's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And that completely eviscerates genuine diversity. That's the ultimate irony, actually, of diversity, is that it's anti-diversity in reality. Because what it tries to do, it tries to blend everything into, it's like getting all paints, right? You red, white, blue, whatever, right? And you throw them into a big pot, and you'll end up with this dirty, mucky kind of, you know, that has no diversity at all, right? And as I think that's the tragedy. I mean, I'm a Catholic, right? And you are, right? And you know, the apostles were told to go out to all the nations and evangelize, which presupposed the validity of all nations. Christ didn't go out to all the people, all the nations, and make them into one big melting pot, right? That wasn't at all. I mean, like, I'll be honest, I went abroad, I've been to Ethiopia, I've seen Ethiopian Orthodox practices, and I said, wow, this is amazing. That doesn't mean I want to go over and change it, like. It's nice to observe it. Like if Nigerians came here and said, we love your culture, we've come over here for a couple of weeks holiday and, you know, want a bit of the craic, we'd be very embracing. We'd go, oh yeah, no problem, yeah, come on over. But there's the exit door there after 2 weeks. Like, pardon?
The missionaries went, just a small number of them, and they were just, you know, a priest to a parish kind of a thing. But they didn't go over as a flock that took over entire neighbourhood kind of thing, like. You know what I mean? They didn't go over to just repossess some land kind of stuff. Just went over and spread the good news of the good faith and all that. That was it. Like, what it is, it's just, I don't know, it's a pain, like, and we're all pretending that isn't it great, it's so dumb. Just watching it all go down the drain, like, it's brutal.
Well, I suppose as well about the missionary thing, like, if we're being consistent, I mean, missionaries went over to other countries and tried to, I suppose, spread what they believed to be true. But at the end of the day, the difference is that people weren't forced to believe in Christianity in Africa. A priest went over, many of them died, same to Japan and all these places, right? They didn't force their beliefs on anyone. They said, this is the good news, and it left people up to themselves to believe it or not, right? And there were, in fact, these people would have been persecuted, right? Especially in Japan. So, like, but nowadays the West has completely forgotten our past. It hates our own more than foreigners, which is very bizarre because, you know, if you even look at animals there, they protect their own first and foremost, you know? And I just find it, and that's why I'm going to nail my colours to the mast here, Jim, and I've said it to you before. I don't necessarily, and I need to stress necessarily, have a problem with migrants, right? And if you hear me out, and I'll explain why, right? Because I think the bigger problem in this country has always been treachery. If you didn't have traitors, you wouldn't have the migrant problem. Migrants are just availing of weakness, right? That we, you know, they're self-interested, and they'll say, well, I see an opportunity here, I'm going to, you know, make hay while the sun shines. That's a very kind of normal response. Now, I'm not saying they're blameless, because they are, because once they get a foot in the door, then they can be very malignant, and we see that with the race baiting. But I think the major problem in the West aren't foreigners, it's traitors, to be honest. Because if you didn't have a traitor, you wouldn't have the problems. And if someone did, like I have a friend in the Ukraine, and when the Black Lives Matter stuff kicked off across the West, and there was a few who tried to kick it off in the Ukraine. The Ukrainians said, we're not having it, you're expelled, get out of the country. So they... exactly. Like, why didn't that happen in Ireland? One say, I'm sorry, you're race baiting, you're denigrating Irish ancestors. You're no longer welcome here. Go away. You're going to be deported.
Or even at that, the problem here we had is most of the fucking Black Lives protesters here were well off women, Irish women.
Exactly. But that brings me on to this point, Jimmy. I need to say it right, that I came across this very interesting statement by an academic in America, and she was saying that in a way, and it comes back to women and feminism, right? Because I think feminism has been a huge blight, and it's not just women, by the way. It's male feminists, I think, are even worse, right? But she was saying, in a way, it's a spiritual attack, and it's a spiritual attack waged against our Blessed Mother. And I thought she made a very good point. And people might be listening going, what's Oscar going to say here now? But when you think of it, right, what is feminism, right? But it's trying to become what men are, right? But it's not the virtues of men, it's the vices of men, right? Sleeping around, abandoning families, getting drunk, right? So feminists wanted to be like men, but not the virtues of men, the vices of men. And where it comes to Our Lady is that the feminism really is the exact opposite of Christian faith, especially the special devotion. We don't worship Our Lady, she's not a god or a goddess, but she was very special in the pantheon of saints because, she gave birth to our Lord, whatever. And Our Lady, when you think of it, she was a virgin and a mother. So virginity, she, would be associated with femininity and a genuine kind of reservedness and, respect for herself. And then the motherhood, obviously, because she gave birth to Christ, we see the attack on motherhood daily by feminists. We saw loads of women, cheering, and male feminists who, as I said, are worse. Cheering the slaughter of little babies, right? So I think it's a direct attack. It's kind of like, that's what I'm saying. This is a spiritual war, right? And I'm going to be honest here as well. Like, I was only thinking this morning. I went on a walk just around around where I live, and there are Black African Americans who I've a fierce a lot of time for, right? That are Christian and they're decent people. I don't have a problem with people's colour. I don't. And I think people are getting sidetracked with this, and I think it's intentional to cause warfare. But at the end of the day, this is Ireland for the Irish, right?
Yeah.
If I went to China for a weekend, I can't call myself Chinese, right?
No.
And even if I lived there for 30 years, I'm not Chinese, right? No. In the same way that if you rented a caravan there for 3 weeks, you suddenly don't become a traveller, do you?
Yeah, I'm kind of. What is the deal with that? So, it's like.
Well, they're considered an ethnic group. Is just kind of is a lot of culture, but also that I suppose is a bloodline, right? I mean, travellers are.
Here's the interest now again. Like you mentioned that thing. And straight away, my curiosity is piqued. I'm like, all right, but the travellers have a different DNA lineage. Do they have different markers of haplogroups? You know what I mean? That's a perfect example of the genuine interest thing. Whereas if you put up that topic to someone else, the lefty crowd, they'd have the typical response. Yeah, but they've been maintaining their culture for these dopes. But there's no genuine curiosity, interest there, or whatever. Things like that. But you can see though why it ties in with the ultimate irony. Anyone championing in this, it's just funny how everyone nearly has a voice. No, I know this is going to sound terrible, but democracy and everyone having a voice is brutal because no one looks into anything at all, and they end up spewing stuff then, and especially fueled by this narcissism, vanity age, they'll have to be heard and told how great their point is if they're parroting a load of crap.
Yeah, but to be fair, Jimmy, we hear it on every side because you'd hear some Irish nationals there abandon the faith of their fathers and they're taking on paganism or joining Protestant sects like, evangelicals and Pentecostals, and all because they don't even know what they left, to be honest.
But people just, take it handy. Practical really should be the main the main reason. Like, but as I said, like, I don't know, maybe people say, oh, sure, you've a great laugh there, whatever, this crowd. Do you seriously? Like, how many sort of concessions do you have to make a lot of the time? Like, again, I'm going to be crude here because we're in a pub, so I'm going to say it. If you're not trying to get the ride off, and you're just like, you're not forced through working with, say, like, other men or something, like, you just seriously go out of your way to, like, hang around with these people. I don't know, like, would you?
What do you mean?
You got to make serious concessions. Like.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
That's great there, just put it down there. Thanks a million.
Explain yourself a bit more. I lost you there.
Oh, did it cut off, did it?
No, I just don't understand what you're saying.
I'm just saying, like, the whole idea of mixing all different types, like, you know, you can see why stick to your own, but maybe there is two different types. But then again, I was quite liberal years ago, so I don't know, like, but I think when you're plunged into this thing, and suddenly you're like, a lot of the thing in Ireland, like, as I call it, Dave, the illness, like, you know, I call it the illness when they're sort of saying these kind of things that are against our own interests, you know, the typical stuff. That they have the illness, I call it. So, like, if they have that, that's grand, but they're coming from a place where they're coming from, like, more or less undisturbed Irishness thing, and then suddenly now it's it'll change, but then it gets to a point where it changes badly, and people just kind of think, oh God, then they turn. I think that's what happened to me. You kind of get enough exposure, like, oh jeez, all my nonsense talk is kind of gone out the window now, like, you know, and that's what it is, nonsense talk, hypotheticals, airy notions, but then you live in it and you're like, it's terrible, you know.
I just think that, to be honest, you know, I think a lot of people are being kind of corralled into certain views, and I think that's to the interests of the globalists, because I think they want people to be what they would use the word racist, because they'll say, oh well, that'll justify our hate speech laws and all this. Like, racism used to be the notion that you held yourself superior to another person based on their race. I don't.
You could eliminate them, like,
Pardon?
they don't deserve to, kind of thing.
Sorry, say that again?
That you could sort of eliminate these other people, you know, genocide people, because they don't deserve to be.
Exactly.
Kind of thing,
like, that's, as I keep saying it, right, I've met smarter, better people than many Irish people I know, right, who aren't Irish, right, who aren't Westerners, right. That is not my issue. At the end of the day, if we were a country of complete Amadons and half-wits, and to be honest, at this rate 80% of the country is, but like, so what? Then it's a country for Amadons. My point is that we should.
Then we need to be left alone because it's dangerous to be around us.
But my point is, right, I think people make a mistake by saying, oh, let's focus on some bad attitudes of migrants, and we use that as an excuse not to bring in migrants. Well, let me make this point. That then presupposes that you're saying, okay, we let a million very well behaved or very conscientious foreigners in. Well, I'm sorry, that still changes the demographics of your country. It's not to me. It's not about character. It's about, this is our country, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, but I think that's where the civic nationalist argument gets, like, is a silly thing to do. It's just silly, like, because, you know, even all the Australians with the point-based system, it's based skills, merit. It's like, no, it's not about that. Like,
exactly.
If you're not, as I said, like, the best thing I've ever heard from a young traveller when I was growing up, we were in his, we went into his lot. We was parking because someone wanted to talk to him, you know, chat to him. I think it was training going on or something, and the young fella came over. I said, about 5. And he just came over and he said, get out, you're not one of us. And I thought, it was the most profound thing I've ever heard.
Did he beat you up? The 5-year-old?
Huh?
Did he beat you up?
He probably could have, actually. So they're all great. But, like, it was very profound. So all this talk of, you know, well, you know, we've got to watch the housing, the levies, and, you know, these people have to be skilled and they have to have merit, and no, none of that. Just, if you're not one of us, you shouldn't be here, like. Not one of us.
But
Not
on
one
that
of us.
point, though,
Simple as
Jimmy,
that.
like you've got the Afghani stuff going on at the moment. And listen, at the end of the day, I feel for some of the Afghanis who have to leave. But there is another part of me then, and it only dawned on me this morning. You know, those who collaborated with the Americans and are saying, oh, we'll be killed. I'm going, well, you know, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, right? And I was saying, imagine if you're an Afghani Taliban, right? And you love your country just as we do, we love ours. And you're going, these people collaborated with the enemy. So I'm kind of going, would I be happy if, and let's be honest, there's an awful lot of collaborators in Ireland who are collaborating with globalists. So in a way, no, I'm not saying that people fleeing Afghanistan should be killed or whatever. But I also point this fact out. Why is it that Ireland has to take in people when we had no role in that conflict? To be honest.
And we're so far away from that area that the neighbouring countries could by far take them in. It was the same thing with the Syria things, remember?
That's
All
right.
those Arab countries that took zero.
Well, exactly.
Zero.
And that's what
Why is it
annoys
all
me, Jimmy, because, can I just make this point there? That's what annoys me, right? Because you keep on hearing how Islamic countries are so welcoming, they treat their people so well. Well, hang on here. How about their fellow brothers in the faith? I mean,
And they were not
yeah. So,
brutal, eh?
And
It's just getting very tiring, alright, isn't it? But it is funny, alright, I always find that, as we're saying globalism, right, that you can see, and this is the ultimate irony again of why the lefty crowd are so kind of mixed up, because they use that word, anti-imperialist, like, but they're doing the job of,
exactly.
well, let's say imperialism is, it's not the old imperialism of the British Empire stuff anymore. It's now the globalist or the corporate
Exactly.
imperialism, whatever. So
It's an imposition of values on other people who don't want them.
But they take over through the business and stuff. But if you think about it, they are like the lefty crowd that say they're anti-imperialist are the new imperialists because
Exactly.
they're all for mixing of all the people. But what does that mean? It means you get the same Aldi or Lidl on every corner all over the world, as you said, McDonald's earlier. You get all that kind of stuff. You get the same Google tech companies everywhere. You get this everywhere, and then the people will all look the same all over the place. So they are the imperial thing, like, you know what I mean? I just find it very odd. You can see how it ties in, that this corporate thing ties in with the and they repeat all the talking points of the globalist, or what would you call it? They repeat all the corporate talking points.
Well, let's be honest, right? The so-called ex-president now of Afghanistan, fecked off with millions. So, and he was just a kind of a patsy for the Americans, right? And I've no doubt that if that regime, under that obviously corrupt president who absconded when all his people were suffering, right, with his millions, and like I've no doubt that under his watch or successors of similar vein, there would have been probably LGBT parades down Kabul in 30 years' time. So this is what the imperialism that the lefties don't either ignore or don't have the intelligence to recognise. Because as far as I'm concerned, the lefties are the new imperialists, right? But it's through cultural imperialism and economic imperialism, right? They're in bed with all good. I mean, look at all the talking points that the lefties agree with, right? Sexualization of children, LGBT, abortion, mass immigration, whatever. Well, that's the irony is they're given that voice by multi-billion-dollar corporations like Google.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They verbatim. They're programmed, but they're the little ground workers of those things they claim to be against.
Yeah.
Like the BLM thing, it's an entire corporate joke, like.
Well, coming back there to the Taliban, right? Obviously, I'm not a fan of the Taliban, right? But at the end of the day, that's Afghanistan. And it's up to the Afghani people to decide what they want. And the Taliban are the most powerful, and they've more or less decided what the Afghani people want, right? Yet, in our country, we're being bombarded from outside, and you've got these morons and traitors willing to sell our country. That will once it's like Harvey Norman. Once it's gone, right? And
Like, is it really Ireland right now? Like, is it?
no, I'll be honest, I did not watch the All-Ireland final, I told you that. And I loved hurling. I remember going to the 70s and 80s, watching Cork, going into Patrick Street or down the Mall or whatever to see the teams come back. I didn't watch it, and I'll tell you why, because I still have images of this imam in Croke Park talking about Irish people in their own country in a derogatory way, and then this imbecile from Sinn Féin, right, who, by the way, is a week previously was chastising the Catholic Church. Then she goes to an Islamic event, which we all know how Muslims tend not to be very pro-women, right?
And we're talking, yeah.
Right? I mean, the irony here, I mean, she's either exceptionally stupid or she's relying on the stupidity of her followers. I don't know which is which, right? I mean, how can you, I mean, will she impose LGBT in Palestine or whatever? Will she go to the West Bank or Gaza and go, hello now, we want rainbow flags now over that mosque over there, like the way she wanted Catholic churches? Will she do that? No, she won't, right? Because she's a sham, and you get the morons listening to her, right? And let's be honest, there are an awful lot of morons in this country, like, let's call a spade a spade.
And a lot of them are zealots as well.
Yeah.
Zealot morons.
You know? I mean, like, I heard this fella today talking about,
and before you say it, Bosco, Sinn Féin, ourselves alone, the fucking irony.
Exactly.
Go on,
yeah.
Fucking hell.
George Soros alone. But I heard this fella there, this other half-wit from the
impressed on alone.
There you go. But this half-wit saying about, gender is just a social construct. Well, then you have to say, well, why do they want to become a woman if it's just a social construct? Why wear a dress if it's just a social construct? Or why take hormones if it's just a social construct? You see, they can't seem to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's. Do you know?
They're all or nothing. Like, I suppose that's why it is. In ways, you can get even more serious here and say that, like, this stuff is the talk of the devil. Like, it's the anti-truth. It's, you know what I mean? It's all over. It's all and nothing. It's the words of the devil, really. Like.
And I think as well, and I'm like a parrot here, because a lot of stuff I kind of tend to repeating, but that's because there's method behind my madness. I don't think some people get it yet. I think even with the church, and a lot of people are very angry, and understandably so. Like, I don't like my local clergy. They're a disgrace, right? They close the doors of the churches. There's young people coming up to the church or with young families, and the door is locked. And listen, those people go, why didn't they come early? But you're listening, if you have a young family, right, you never know what's going to happen. There might be a leakage, or, a little kid forgot something, or the parents being parents, they're all over the place. So, but they come to the church and they're a bit late, a couple of minutes, and the door's closed. What kind of message is that sent? Do you know? Or an old person who, I walked down to the church, then they lost, their agility isn't as good as it was, so they had to take a couple of moments out, and they ended up walking, being late. I mean, like, people, you see, will leave the church because of bad shepherds, right? And I keep telling, if you focus on we're all human beings are imperfect, right? So if you look to imperfect people as the church, which is perfect itself, well, then you're on a loser. Like, I go down to Mass there and I'd be angry. I'm going, hang on, I have to get myself together and saying, hang on here. I'm not here for this priest. And I'll be honest, I see some Indians at Mass, right? And they're very respectful, whatever. And I've no problem with them at Mass. But by the same token, they're not Irish.
Yeah.
Do you know? So, like...
I don't know, there's a funny one. I just think I'm laughing there that we're here in the pub, right? And we're all this kind of like dreary talk. they'd be like, there'd be no one come back to this pub.
Craic, of course, isn't with us. Craic is escaping the. Craic is on the run from the TV licence inspector.
He is, yeah. He built a rocket and all to get away, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He was doing a great escape there. But
He was fat,
yeah, I mean, this is a nice pub now. You don't have to show your passport or whatever. I think you actually get a free pint if you haven't taken the vaccine. So,
handy, yeah. It is an anti-soup.
Yeah. But will we go over there and get a burger? Will we call it a day?
Yeah, get something to eat and head off. I suppose so, yeah.
You better pay the bill there. You never pay the bill.
It is very funny. They know me, sure. I'll tell them I sort them
Put it
out,
on the
John
tab, yeah.
But you know what's funny? Actually, I was talking to the fella John the week, and I said, look, I'll try stop complaining now. Like, I'll try stop giving out. And today, obviously, was the complete opposite of that.
Jeez, you were on a rant there a while, but you're listening. Listen, it is frustrating, and you see my fear, right? Again, and we leave it with this: is that people will target the wrong people, right? They'll target some, poor Muslim guy or poor African guy, right? And when I say poor, I mean he might be, his character might be a decent person, right? But that doesn't mean he's Irish, and it doesn't mean that he's not self-interested, and it doesn't mean that he's willing to, avail of loopholes and deny Irish people, access to a house, whatever. But by the same token, I would implore people that the real enemies in this country are fellow Irish people who have been traitors. Because if we didn't have traitors, we would have no problems. And that's what I implore people, because they want people to label us, say, oh, they're just a load of bigots, they'll be out with their Ku Klux Klan outfits. I'm not certain. I'm the exact opposite, to be honest. If I saw a gay person being beaten up, I'd be the first person to say, hey, leave them alone. Or a black person or a Muslim. But by the same token, right, this is our country and these are our traditions. And the people who are destroying this country are traitors. Because, they're, to the left of us, to the right of us. They're in government, they're in the media. You've got people complaining there about kind of COVID regulations and all this, and the government, but you can bet your bottom dollar that most of these people voted for this regime, or they'll vote for Sinn Féin in the next election, who are even worse than the current show. So I say keep your eye on the prize. The traitors are the problem, and migrants are just a symptom, right? If you get rid of the symptom, you're not actually getting rid of the cause, right? Keep your focus on the cause, and the cause is treachery.
It's this illness there, so I suppose we'll pray that the illness find its way out of the heads of the Irish people. Like.
Exactly. I mean, Brian Boru was not a racist because he didn't want the Vikings, to come into the country. Our ancestors were not racist because we had rebellions against English and, foreigners, right? It's just that we wanted our own land. We didn't want to invade. Brian Boru didn't want to invade England. Padraig Pearse didn't want to invade England. We just wanted our own patch for our own people and to maintain our customs. That's all. So if anybody calls you a racist, xenophobe, Islamophobe, just kind of ignore them because they're not engaging with you.
I wish we were. We'd have, we wouldn't have half the trouble we have now. This kind of thing that Irish people have to kind of, just kind of be nice and say nothing and put up with everything. Just like when you're at the restaurant, you don't like it, you say, oh, it's grand, yeah, lovely, yeah, very good. Yeah. You know what I mean? That attitude.
Well, people are bending over backwards now, you see, to kind of, we'd love a bit of diversity on the TV. And in a way, right, that is pure racism. Because it's not judging someone on their merit. It's saying, we just want to make us feel good because we can sit in our kind of comfortable kind of sitting room and watch this kind of play out as if it's some kind of theatre, These people don't care about anybody, let alone their own people. They certainly don't care. I mean, does Simon Coveney and all these people genuinely care about migrants? No. it's all about a different agenda.
You won't be living with them, like.
And Peter Sutherland said it. You destroy nations by destroying the homogeny of a nation. And you do that through multiculturalism. So this, we've been told it, like, and they're telling us now, in the same way that they're telling us you'll own nothing. And by the way, they say you, they don't say we'll own nothing, you'll own nothing, and you'll be happy.
Yeah.
Like, they're actually telling us what they're doing. But anyway, listen, we'll call it a day?
Great crack with the lads, huh?
Yeah, Jimmy, I'd say, has to go to confession for about the next 24 hours non-stop, I'd say. So, listen, we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Enjoy yourselves. Have a good laugh now after that. See ya.
See ya. Bye.